Witam Państwa serdecznie, Błażej Hrapkowicz, 29. edycja Międzynarodowego Festiwalu Filmowego EnergaCAMERIMAGE w Toruniu. Special guest director Joe Wright is with us.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me.
Enjoying your stay in Toruń?
I am, yeah. It's a beautiful city, and it seems fitting that a film festival for cinematographers should be in the city of Copernicus.
Yeah, it's very fitting, I think. Let's start with the most important thing. What is your favorite David Lean film?
Favorite David Lean film? Brief Encounter.
Mine too.
Yeah.
That is brilliant. Because when we think about David Lean, we think, of course, Lawrence of Arabia, this big epic scope cinema. Yeah. But Brief Encounter is, for me, one of the best melodramas ever made.
I agree.
Yeah.
And also because it was the perfect meeting of director and writer Noel Coward and actor Celia Johnson. And if you have that triangle, then you can achieve perfection.
Yeah, I know that. I asked it, of course, because I know that David Lean is one of your favorite directors and mine too. But I also asked that because when I watch your films, I get the impression that you're very fond of the melodrama genre, and that the tragic aspect of the melodrama genre, but also the big scope narrative. This is the tradition I always felt you're very close to.
Yeah, I don't know. I never kind of intellectually set out to go, I'm going to make, big scope melodramas. It's just how I'm drawn to things. I think what I know I'm definitely drawn to is drama. And I know that drama for me is about human connection, about how we connect as humans and how we so often fail to connect with each other. And that is the central concern of drama for me. And maybe that's one of the central concerns of life for me. I'm not great at human connection, and so I'm trying to figure it out.
Yeah, you try to use cinema to be better at it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I use cinema to be a better person.
Yeah, you also did a few adaptations of a classic literature.
Yeah,
Pride and Prejudice, of course, Jane Austen, but also Anna Karenina, one of my favorite books of all time, by Tolstoy. What did you find the most interesting thing about the Anna Karenina story? What was your area of focus and your sort of point of entry into that classical story?
It was a long time ago. I think what I found most interesting was her kind of moral ambiguity, was her standing on a very fine line and making very, very difficult choices. And her attempt to avoid the calamitous outcome of choices she made in her life.
Yeah.
It's a long time since I've thought about why I made that film. But I think those are certainly some of the nature of love is always something that I'm trying to figure out, really.
Yeah, we're going to talk, of course, about Cyrano in a second. But before we do that, one of my favorite films you've ever done, and which I have always thought about this film as a sort of a bit of outlier in your filmography, is Hannah, which I think is a brilliant genre film, brilliant thriller, but also a very twisted fairy tale. Yeah, and I wonder what was your main idea and approach to this film?
Really, it was the fairy tale. I mean, I love David Lean, but David Lean was quite an early childhood influence. And as I came into my teens, I switched to, or not switched, but I developed a very passionate love for David Lynch. And I think Hannah was somehow responding to that side of my sort of cineast's love. It was a fairy tale, and it was about human connection. The genre was less important to me. It was more about Hannah, this stranger from a strange world, trying to figure out how to connect with other human beings, which again seems to be the central theme that runs through a lot of my films. Not that I was ever really, I didn't set out to make films about this. It just, with reflection now, I can see it.
It came from within you, I understand that. But you talk about this human connection running through your film, or this attempt to forge a human connection, or failure to do so. And the story of Cyrano, Cyrano de Bergerac, I mean, it seems to me it's about that.
Yes.
And this sort of trying to make a connection with someone through someone else. Yeah. But it's also seemed to me always seemed to me as a story of a sort of manipulation, and how love can involve some kind of manipulation.
Yeah, I mean, I think how Cyrano tries to achieve that connection is misguided, because I believe that if only Cyrano had told Roxanne that he was in love with her right at the beginning, I think everything would have been okay. There would be no Cyrano movie, but I think everything would have been okay. Or it would be a very short one. Yeah, exactly. I love you. Great. I love you too. Let's
wrap this up.
Yeah. So I think there is an element of manipulation, absolutely, but I think everyone's manipulating everyone else as well. I think that this version of Cyrano gives a little bit more weight to Christian and credence to Christian, and a little bit more agency to Roxanne, and I hope it's quite a strong triangle between all three, and all three of them are misleading each other in some way. Cyrano's misleading Roxanne, but he's also misleading Christian. I think Roxanne is also misleading them both as well. I think one of the big questions that we asked ourselves as a group when we were in rehearsals was, how much does Roxanne know? Does she really believe that Christian is writing these letters? Does she not see that Cyrano is in love with her? And if she does even glimpse Cyrano's love, then what are her thoughts about that? What are her feelings about that? And so we tried to kind of create a slightly more honest triangle, and more balanced, maybe is the better word, triangle.
In terms of visual style, I always felt that your films you are not trying to hide that this is all a cinematic creation. They are artificial in a deliberate way, and sometimes even like in Anna Karenina, it feels like it's all on the stage. And I wonder if I always felt that the power of cinematic creation is sometimes a better way to deliver some kind of truth than actually just, registering reality. And I feel that in your films, and I suppose the Cyrano is quite the same.
Yeah. It's a kind of, there was a point at which I got frustrated with realism, I remember because it's such a passive experience for audiences. And I remember my dad once, I spoke at the opening ceremony about my dad was a puppeteer. Yeah. And I remember someone calling up to book tickets for his show. And they said, is there any audience participation? Because we don't like audience participation. And my dad said, yes, madam, there is audience participation. There is the participation of the imagination. And I felt that stuck with me, and I thought about it a lot over the years. And cinema in the realist tradition, which pervades all Western cinema, fills every single inch of the screen with reality, right? So it's a very passive experience. And I started reading Meyerhold and getting into Brecht quite a lot, and started seeing that there was an alternative to this in theatre, and whether there was potentially an alternative in film too. And so I was really kind of investigating these less passive, more active experiences for audiences, which I hoped might be more enriching, with just a little bit more work required by the audience.
I think we can see the results of that investigation.
Yes, I'm not sure if it works. I don't know. It's just experiments. You know.
I think it usually works. And,
well, each film is an experiment, so you know.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you
for your time.
Thank you very much indeed. It's lovely to be here.
Lovely to have you here.